Yes, mic check 1 2 1 2. RealChampTalk podcast. See who I'm bringing out today, man. Long Island legend. Long Island legend. We're gonna give this man a big round of applause right here, man. Listen. You know what I'm saying? Gotta do the proper introduction, man. ACC finest, University of Maryland. Alright, Long Island Lutheran's finest, one of the best guards to come out of Long Island. I honestly say I got a chance to witness it firsthand. Pro, great guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth. I told you I was bringing out a heavy hitter today. I want to welcome to the RealChampTalk podcast, Drew Nicholas, man. Thank you for taking out the time, for pulling up, man. Before I get started, to the people tuning in, please go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, like, comment, all that. I ain't gonna hold y'all up, man. We're gonna get right into it, man. Drew Nicholas, welcome to the show. Before I get started, dig into your history, the first question I'm gonna ask you, do you still hoop? Are you still out here cooking cats?
What's up, Dave, man? First, but before we get started, man, I just want to say thank you, man. I love what you're doing with the show. I appreciate you for hitting me, trying to get me on, and it's always a pleasure to catch up with guys who, it's been some years now, but, we had a chance to go through our legendary runs up at Lehigh and whatnot, but
Yes, sir.
great chance to connect. But go ahead, ask me your question once again.
Yeah, man. Are you still cooking cats? Is the jumper still butter, man? Are you still hooping? And any like little 40 and up leagues here and there, something? Man, you still hooping?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, man. So, I had a long enough career to where even though I didn't get hurt, while I was playing, last June I actually had hip surgery. I had my whole hip done. So,
Oh, wow.
the playing career is done. I can still get out there and I can still probably shoot, 90 or 95 out of 100, but there is no more 5-on-5 getting up and down, getting all into it, man. Those days are
I
long
respect
gone.
it. So the jump shot's still butter. It's still butter.
Jump shot's still there.
Okay, that's what's up. All right, so that's foremost we wanted to get that out the way. All right, so let's take it back to your origin, your history. When did you tell us a little bit like when you first got started playing ball, where you grew up at, like who was some of like your early influences when you started first playing?
Yeah, man. So, I grew up close to you. I grew up on Long Island in Hempstead, New York. And I was one of those kids, man, that ever since I can remember, probably 3-4 years old, I always just had a ball in my hand. And it was the only sport that I ever played. It was my only true love. I remember when I was like 5 or 6, man, like I remember my dad gave me a beating for it, but I wrote on my bedroom wall that I want to be an NBA player. So, the game has been ingrained in me ever since I was that small. And as far as guys who I looked up to, and I know you know him as well because he would come up and he would play with us is Speedy Claxton. Because we grew up in the same town. And, we would play PAL together. He was a couple years older than me, but he was the first one who used to kill me. And it would hurt me because I'd always want to be the one to get back at him. But, he was 3-4 years older than me, and Speedy was a legend in his own right. And he's the one that kind of paved the way for guys like me growing up in Hempstead of trying to become an NBA basketball player.
Dope. So early on, so like, what's when you're a young kid and you first playing, like, what are some like your early remembrance of like some of the parks and stuff that you was playing at, like when you was a kid and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny, man. So I was one of the more fortunate kids in Hempstead where I lived. Like, my parents had enough to where they put a hoop right outside my driveway. They initially did it for my brother because my brother's 8 years older than me, and he played. He also went to Long Island Lutheran as well. So I was always just outside getting shots up, and I think that's where I started to develop that craft of being able to shoot the ball because I would just spend hours and hours all the way until even after the street lights would come on, man, I'd still stay out there for about as long as I could. As long as I could see that rim, I'm gonna be out there shooting.
Okay, out in that driveway early on. All right, so when did you start taking like basketball serious? Like, when did you see like, I'm nice at this?
Um, it's funny, man, just because like today's era is so different than us. Like, when we were growing up, it wasn't all about getting with the trainer and going to a gym and putting in hours, like developing your skill. You just want to go outside and hoop with your friends. Like whether
Right.
that was in my driveway or going to the park or going someplace where there was good bump, like that's just where you wanted to be. So that was kind of the biggest motivating factor. I don't think I really started to understand that how much of a chance I had was probably not until like close to high school, maybe like eighth, ninth grade, in which like I really thought that I might have a chance at going to college and then kind of seeing what goes on from there.
So where did you go to middle school at?
So I went to middle school at Trinity Lutheran, which is basically like the feeder school that goes into Long Island Lutheran, and I played on their like their middle school teams. Like I remember one of my first experiences, and maybe this probably should have been a time in which I should have thought that I had a chance at. I remember I was in like the fifth grade, and I was playing on like the sixth grade team, and man, and I remember we went out and we played a team and we lost like 50-33 or something, and I had all 33. And so and that was probably me just because I wanted to take all the shots. But
Right.
it was probably around then when I probably should have known that, hey man, I might have something here.
Okay, so early on, all right, so middle school in Long Island. So you end up playing varsity for 4 years at Long Island Lutheran.
No, no. I only ended up playing varsity for 3 years. So here's a good story. And Fab. There's a kid named Fab Fisher who's my best friend. I mean, we were tighter than tight all throughout high school. He actually ended up making varsity over me my ninth grade year. Like we were the last two cuts, and Coach Hall ended up keeping Fab. And I think that was one of the earliest like points of, I want to call it adversity, but also like an important part of my career in the sense of like, all right, well, what are you gonna do now? And I remember every day,
That
man.
lit a fire under you a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that starts to put a chip on my shoulder. Walking down every day, um, after school, going to practice, and Fab got to go on the middle court, and I had to go off on one of the side courts. So yeah, I only ended up playing 3 years of varsity ball.
Okay, so your freshman year, you kind of developing your game, you getting yourself right, and then your sophomore year, tell us, what you remember about like your sophomore year. How'd you do your sophomore year?
Yo, it's crazy, man. Like my sophomore year, I was probably because they had so many guys coming back. I was the last person kept on varsity, and to
Wow.
be honest, like my whole sophomore year, I probably played in a couple of games. Games when we would have blowouts and stuff like that. But I was probably the 11th or 12th man. Um, and again, I think that was another one of those things that just kind of fueled my fire, put that chip on my shoulder, like because I knew I could play, but I was real skinny at the time, and I probably wasn't ready physically to be able to play against some of those high school guys that were a little bit older than me.
Right. And too, like, you did go to a school that was, pretty talented. Did you, because I had asked Rib this question, another Maryland great, did you catch flack, because you're from Hempstead, did you catch flack from, like, friends from around the way, like, yo, man, why you going to the private school, man? I'm kind of, listen, I'm thankful that you didn't end up at Hempstead High School at the team with that, bro. Did
Yeah,
you have to
man.
deal
I
with
mean,
that?
yeah, I mean a little bit, especially from kids around the way, because the stigma of kids that go to private school. They think they're a little bit soft, and they're not as tough as kids that go to public schools. And we all know what Hempstead High School is about. And it's funny, man. I look back and I think about all the guys that did end up going to private school from Hempstead. Man, if we would have all went to Hempstead High School, we would have been a monster. I mean, a monster. I mean, me, Fab, Rob Wright. I know there were some other guys that went to some other private schools that lived in Hempstead. Like, you know, we would have we would have done some
I
damage.
ran it. Bro. Listen, it'd have been over, bro.
Yeah,
It'd have been over.
yeah, but nah, but you know, and that was also one of the things I always wanted to do because I would see all those guys in the summer. We would play summer league together, and you know, they all thought I was soft or whatnot. But once we stepped in between those lines, I think those guys understood that it was a little something different. Because at the end of the
Absolutely.
game, like, yeah, sometimes they wanted to fight me, but I knew that was coming out of respect because of what I did to them on the court. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I always took that with me.
All right. So your junior year is kind of like when your name starts. You still there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still here.
Oh, no, you're good. Your junior year is when like your name starts ringing out a little bit, and now this is before internet and you know what I'm saying, all this stuff. So back then, if your name is ringing out, getting around the town, that's saying a whole lot.
Yep.
Tell us about your junior year, man. How it just all started clicking for you.
Yeah, so you know, after my sophomore year, we had like 7 seniors leave the team. So there was only like 4 or 5 guys coming back. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I knew that I was going to have a chance to start, and I knew it was my time to start going. And
Mm-hmm.
again, man, I was just ready. You know, from not making a varsity my freshman year to not playing at all my sophomore year. By the time my junior year came around, I was like, nah, I ain't. You know, these last 2 years are mine. So you know,
Right.
I had a real good junior year. I think I ended up making like second team all Long Island. I thought I should have been first team, but you know, it was all good. It was something again that added a little extra fuel for me going into my senior year. But you know, I think that's when people. And then by the end of the year, I remember we went up to Glens Falls and we made the final against Rice, and I had 2 big games up in Glens Falls. I had 23 in the semifinal, and then I had 26 against Rice in the final, which was the top 5 team in the country. I think after then everybody kind of knew that I was coming.
So that's the crew where you put. That's when you was going against Kay Satterfield, Andre Barrett, all
Yep,
those that crew right
yep.
there. That was your junior
Yeah,
year.
Anthony Glover. Yeah, so you
Oh,
know,
man.
both years, my junior and senior year, they were both top 5 in the country. So,
Right.
you know, those guys were about it, but I was coming at them.
Yeah. So your junior year, is there anybody else that brings out that like gave you like a good run for your money? Your junior year that gave you like good comp.
So yeah, I mean, so I remember my junior year. I believe we played Jason Williams' team. Jason Williams, who I ended up playing against a lot at Duke. You know, he was playing for a high school in New Jersey, so played against him. Again, guys like Kenny Sadd, Andre Barrett, um, you know, a whole bunch of guys that just, you know, that were probably more, that had more recognition and were more nationally known. But every time I stepped on the court with them, you know, I was shooting a fair one with them. So I knew I was close. I knew I was there.
Yeah. So your name kind of blew up quick. It got buzzing, and then going into your senior year, was that the year where they had you your team on the cover of the high school preview
Yeah,
and all that? Yeah, I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
remember that, man. I was a little, you know, I ain't gonna front. I was a little jelly. I'm like, damn, yo, who are these guys?
Yeah, man. So yeah, we had our whole starting 5 coming back, and you know, I think that summer was the summer that I committed to Maryland, and so like by that time, now I knew I had a bullseye on my back. I know that every game,
So you started getting recruited. You started getting recruited your junior year
the
after you
summer of
blew
my
up.
junior year, the summer of my junior year was my breakout year, was my breakout party because I'll never forget it, man. Like right after the season had ended, we had went down and we had played a tournament down in D.C. against a team called D.C. Assault. And at the time, they had DeMar Johnson, who was the number 1 player in the country. They had Keith Bogans and Joe Forte, who were they're all 3 of those guys were like top 15 in the country. And I don't know why they did it that day, but man, they decided to play zone, and I had 37. And one of the assistants at Maryland just happened to be in the gym. And, you know, I wasn't being that heavily recruited by ACC schools up until that point. But thankfully, he was in the gym that day. And I remember when I was walking out, you know, this is back in the days when coaches couldn't necessarily speak to you. But I'm walking in the parking lot, and he said it. He said it to Gary Charles loud enough so that I could hear it. He said, "I'm coming for that kid." And right ever since then, like, I knew I had to go, man, because nothing beats the ACC, especially back at that time.
Right. So when you started drawing attention, getting your name out there, was there any other like interest from any other schools that was started paying you attention?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I played ABCD that summer, so I got a chance to play against the top 150 kids in the country. Schools like St. John's, Syracuse were coming after me, but it's funny. My final two actually ended up being Maryland and Hofstra, because at the time Jay Wright was still at Hofstra, and
Right.
Speedy Claxton was gonna be a senior when I would have been a freshman. So, like I looked at that as like a great opportunity, to play with one of the guys that I like looked up to, and I felt like Hofstra was on the up and up. But at the end of the day, man, like I couldn't turn down the ACC, man. I couldn't turn down those Maryland shorts, the jersey, all that. So,
So you took your
I
college,
ended up doing it.
You took your college visit there
Yeah,
to Maryland, and you just like
to
fell in love
Maryland.
with it.
Nah,
Yeah.
nah, I didn't even take my college visit. Like, man, like, so after that game, they started recruiting me. They watched me all summer, and then early my senior year, like in the fall, before the season started, I went down and played a tournament called the Charlie Weber, and I remember Gary Williams came in the gym to watch me. And I just remember playing my heart out, and right after the game, I got a call. They told me to come up to his office, and he offered me a scholarship, and I jumped on it. I wasn't waiting. Yeah, because again, man, like I knew like those opportunities don't come around so often. My parents actually made me wait. They were like, "Nah, Coach Williams got to come to the house and sit down and meet with us before you can actually sign." But he did, man. Like it was a big day. I remember him coming, pulling up in a limo in Hempstead, coming inside my house. Talking to my parents for a little bit, but then I committed right there.
That had to make you feel good, like, yo, I got an ACC coach sitting in my living room. I'm pretty good at this sport
Yeah.
right here.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So your senior year, you do your thing. You committed to Maryland. Obviously, you got your name ringing. How'd you guys finish up your senior year?
So again, we lost to Rice up in the state tournament. This time it was the semifinal. And again, man, Rice was literally the number 2 team in the country. It was Oak Hill 1, Rice 2. And we had them, man. Like we were up 8 at halftime. Me personally, I had a great game. Like we ended up losing by I think like 12 or 15, but man, I had 33. Again, like I was coming at those dudes
Yeah, you was
anytime
going
I
up.
had a chance.
Listen, nobody. Listen, man, you was getting buckets, bro. You was lighting it up in high school, bro. Like once it started clicking for you, there was it was pretty much a wrap, man. So going into your freshman year, what are some of your early remembrance, like getting to the University of Maryland? You were in college, freshman year, doing the workouts. And what are like some of the adjustments you had to make coming from high school into college, playing at that level?
Man, it was crazy, man. So I'll take it back a little bit. Like again, I didn't take a visit before I committed to University of Maryland, but then I ended up taking my visit during Midnight Madness. This is back when Midnight Madness was a thing. And that year before I got to Maryland, they had a crazy stacked team. They had LaRon Prophet, they had Abina Kesey, they had Terrence Morris, and they had this kid that people didn't necessarily know about, but his name was Steve Francis. And man, I remember, yeah. So I remember
I was gonna ask you about that.
So I remember coming into Midnight Madness. I'm watching him taking off doing windmills from almost the free throw line, and I'm like, man, what did I get myself into, man? Like, am I really supposed to be going to a school like this? But nah. But my freshman year, it was cool, man. It was an adjustment. I think one of the biggest things was that I was so small. I was probably only 160 pounds, soaking wet. And now all of a sudden I'm playing up against guys that are 6'5", 6'6", 200, 220 pounds and trying to navigate that. But it was a great season for me, man, because, again, like I still had some flack, especially from people back home like, Drew's good, but he's not good enough to go to Maryland. He ain't never going to play at Maryland. And sure enough, man, my
Right.
freshman year, I ended up averaging like 17 minutes a game. I was one of the first guys off the bench and playing. So I knew I had exceeded expectations from that standpoint.
Yeah, and not only that, you went to a good program to where there are other guys that are just as good, and you got Juan Dixon at the two. Uh,
D
I
Blake
mean,
at the
y'all got a
one.
nice crew. Yeah, bro. Steve Blake was a freshman with you that year.
Yep, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so y'all had a nice crew. So so we taking it back to 1999 through
Yep.
2000, your freshman year. Y'all went 25-10 that
No
year.
doubt. No doubt. Yeah, we ended up losing to UCLA in the second round of the tournament. And UCLA's team was loaded. They had Earl Watson and Jerron Rush and Jerome Moiso, who was a lottery pick. And I mean, they probably had 4 or 5 pros on that team.
Jason, I was getting ready to read off the names when I was looking through Jason Capono, Matt
Yep.
Barnes. I'm like, Matt Barnes is on that team. Who was like I had Ray Young. I remember Dan got Zurich. I'm like,
Yep. Yeah.
ooh. So what was that first making the March Madness? You guys had a great year, right? 25-10 in the ACC, just overall throughout. You guys had a good run. What was that first initial experience playing in March Madness? What was that like for you?
Man, it was surreal, man, because I remember the first 2 rounds we were playing in. I forget what city we were playing. I think we were playing in Minneapolis. I think where it was like you're not even playing in a basketball arena. We were playing in a football dome, and so like there's like
Mm-hmm.
35,000 people sitting there watching you play, and so like that experience alone was surreal. And as a kid, man, growing up watching March Madness, and then all of a sudden you getting that chance to go out there and be on the floor and try to win a national championship, man, it was surreal.
Right. So your freshman year, talk about like some of those practices, right? You playing obviously Juan Dixon, is the two spot, you're a shooting guard. How was those practices like going at it with him and just overall like that competitiveness, man?
Competitive as can be from day one, man. Because I was coming in there. I just wanted to make sure that you know people knew who I was, and I was making a name for myself. And Juan was as tough as and competitive as can be. And man, there were many a times, man, where we were probably this close, man, from going to blows and doing all that. But at the end of the day, I think it just made us both better. And he would. I bet you he would still tell you all the time, man. Like I was one of the hardest dudes that gave him problems on the defensive end, and then, man, and he was a great player, obviously in his own right. All the stuff that he was able to accomplish during his college career.
Right. All right. So you finish up your freshman year, right? Going into that summer, was you staying? Because I remember you would come up to Lehigh. We played during the summer, but did you stay down in Maryland and stay down there and play like in the leagues and stuff out there?
Yeah, again, like I would stay down in Maryland probably for like the first 6 weeks of the summer, and then I'd come home probably for like the last 2 or 3 weeks, just so I give my body a little chance to heal and whatnot. But yeah, man, I was locked in at that point. Like there was nothing else. A lot of guys sometimes want to come home during the summer and hang out and see their boys. Like for me at that
Yeah.
point, like once you're around guys like that and everybody has got a common denominator trying to get to the league, like your mindset becomes so focused, like, and you just want to do everything you can in order to get to that level. So, it became real serious at that point, just because, like, again, you get around a number of guys that all have the same desires as you just start to tend to feed off of each other.
Right. Did you ever bump in during that summer? Did you ever bump into Steve Francis in any of those runs that you pull up to, what I'm saying, like back to the university alumni?
Man, so listen, so we would always play late, because they'd have summer camp during the day, and then our runs would probably
Mm-hmm.
start at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I tell you, man, like everybody who's from the DMV would always come up and play in our runs, man. Like Wizard players, Sam Cassell used to come back, Steve Francis came
Mm-hmm.
back, dudes like Rodney White, just a whole number of pros, man. But the one guy that's like you said, the one guy that always separated himself and was just a little bit different than everybody else was Franchise, man. And I'll be keeping 100, man. There were times he'd walk in the gym and he was smelling straight like the club the night before. Man, you could smell he was sweating out that alcohol or whatever he was doing that night before. And guess what? We still ain't had no answers.
Still, yeah.
Man, it was, man. You would just pray.
Athletic handles.
Man, you would
He
just
was just
pray.
different.
You would just pray that his shot wasn't on because, like, man, he would break you down, and then once he broke you down, if he had any kind of space to lift, man, it was takeoff time. Takeoff time. Like, to a whole different level. Dana, I kid you not. Man, this is Steve Francis, like, starting point guard for the West All-Star team. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is
Yeah.
as real as it gets, man. So being able to see that up close and personal, whew, man, you looked forward to it, but you also didn't necessarily want to be the one guarding.
Right. You knew it was gonna be a long day.
Oh,
Like, damn,
man.
bro, this dude is he's hell to deal with, man. So all right, so you finished up your freshman year, you're going into your sophomore year, you got the pretty solid crew coming back, right? This is the year you guys make it to the Final Four.
Yep.
Talk about that year and some of the battles that y'all was loaded that year, man.
Yeah,
Talk
man.
about that sophomore
Yo,
year.
we was loaded. So this is kind of like the beginning of the Maryland Duke rivalry for the people that they kind of remember how intense that was. And Duke was stacked, man. They had Jay Williams, they had Mike Dunleavy, they had Carlos Boozer, they had Shane Battier, they had Chris Duhon. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, so like when we would step on the court, man, like there was probably like 8 or 9 guys that played in the league on that floor, you know, starting off on jump ball, ready to go. And we played them 4 times that year. They beat us 3 of the times. And then we beat them at Duke at their place on Shane Battier's final game at Duke.
Senior night.
Yeah, at Duke. Yeah, so that was a good one, man. But that last one hurt when we played, because we played them in the Final Four, and I'll never forget it, Dane, because I was in the game at the time. We walking off the floor at the under 4 timeout, and I remember glancing up at the scoreboard, man, and we were up 39-17. 39-17. And then we let it take off. They made a run before halftime, cut it to like 10, and then in the second half, Jay Williams was a monster. No, Jay Williams and Shane. Shane was a monster, man. Like they blew the game open.
Yeah, and that was because I know you had Terrence Morris on that team. Was that his senior year?
Yeah, that was his senior year. That was Terrence Morris' senior year. Yep.
Okay. So to get to the Final Four, I'm seeing here going over my y'all went 25-11 that year. So y'all knocked off. Let me see here who y'all knocked off.
I remember we knocked off Georgetown in the Sweet 16. We knocked off Stanford in the Elite 8. I can't remember who we knocked off. I think George Mason in our first game. So Stanford had like Casey Jacobson and the Collins twins. Georgetown had a kid, Kevin Braswell, who was real good, who was actually one.
That was the lefty one, right?
Yep, he was actually
Sweetie. Yeah, Sweetie.
Yep.
Yeah, so y'all be George Mason, Georgia State, Georgetown, Stanford, and Duke. That's a nice run, man. Just talk about like the playing that amount of games and keeping your body together. Like, what was it? Was that challenging?
I mean, it was challenging, like getting from the first to the second round. You know, going from first round to second round, because you know in the NCAA formats, like you'll play Thursday night, and then you'll have to turn right back around and play like Saturday afternoon. So you only got like less than 48 hours to make sure that you get hydrated, get prepared, do all your scouting reports, get a little practice in and then you essentially just got to go right back out and play. And each round and each weekend is like that. So first and second round you'll play 2 games in 3 days. Same thing for the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. So yeah, it's a little bit different as opposed to during the year where you've got 3-4 days in between each game to kind of rest, recover, and get ready for the next team.
Right. So early on, right, your freshman and sophomore year, what was like the toughest like road games for you where it was like,
Oh,
damn, bro, these places
oh,
like these hostile
oh
environment?
man.
Of course, we know Canada.
Yeah, for sure it's Cameron, man. Just because, like, again, at that time, we were both, my sophomore year, we were both like top 5 in the country all year. Our games were nothing but 7 or 9 o'clock ESPN games, like prime time. You know,
Yeah, that's when
Dick
it was.
Vitale was on the call. Like, there was nothing bigger. And man, I remember like being at Duke, like especially you know how the fans all jump up and down right before the jump ball. Like you'd be standing there
Yeah,
and the floor would actually be like moving up and down, just because it's like so loud and it's so like, and it's a small gym, man. It probably only holds like 8,000 people, but everybody's right there on top of you, so it's crazy.
right. Damn. So y'all lost the Final Four. I know going into the summer, being that y'all got that close and y'all felt like y'all probably had a chance to win it all because you know Duke went on and they won the chip. That'd have been an ill matchup, y'all versus Arizona.
No doubt, no doubt.
Y'all, that'd have been
No
crazy
doubt.
right there. That'd
They
have been
they they
crazy.
they, they had
So
another young dude who was and Mr. Gilbert Arenas. I mean that team was stacked too, man. They had Gilbert, they had Richard Jefferson, they had Lauren Woods, they had Michael Wright. They were loaded, man. Jason Gardner, who was a McDonald's All American, like they were as good as any team in the country.
yeah, when you start getting to that level, you get down to the Final Four. That's like the best of the best, man. That's and we talking about the early 2000s. That's a lot of hoopers, a lot of killers out there,
Yep.
right there, man. So going into your junior year, I know you guys were like motivated to get back, and y'all pretty much like talk about going into that summer. What was different about that summer going into your junior year, being that y'all got a taste of like that Final Four experience?
Man, we had the confidence. You know, that sophomore year, we were the first team in Maryland history to get to a Final Four. So, like us knowing that we could get to the Final Four, the only person we lost from that team was Terrence Morris, and he was a big part for us. But we had a dude who was sitting on the bench, who was a freshman who didn't get a chance to play a lot, and Chris Wilcox, who we knew, like he was coming. He was coming. So we knew, like, you know, as much as we were going to miss Terrence, we had somebody that was going to step right in and we weren't going to miss a beat. So, man, I remember our motto that year was unfinished business. That's what we put on our summer shirts. Like every time when we'd work out in the summertime, it would have unfinished business written across our shirt and our numbers on the back. And so that was our mentality, man, just knowing that, like, we knew what we had to do to get there, and like we missed an opportunity to finish it off, but you know, there wasn't nothing that anybody was going to be able to do to stop us from getting back there.
Yeah, because by then y'all got seasoned, so you're in your junior year. You got LB. For those that don't know, Lonnie Baxter, he's a senior. He's monster down in the post. You got Juan Dixon, Kellen, you, Steve Blake. You had your man Byron Mouton.
Yep.
Dirty work. He gonna go out there. He gonna thug it out, slug it out with whoever.
Yo, so here's
y'all went 30.
here's the crazy thing, Dane. Like everybody remembers Mouton as being like that kind of guy for us, but yo, when Mouton was coming out of high school, he was a top 10 player coming out of his class. He grew up in Louisiana, averaged like 35 a game, was like a stone cold killer. But you know, I think that just kind of showed like about our team, like how good and how deep we were. Like everybody had to play a role. Like there were a whole bunch of guys that probably could have went out and got 20 a game, but we all had to sacrifice a little something in order to make ourselves the best team possible. So like I always say that about Mouton, man. Like he was like the glue, because I think he was the one that sacrificed the most. In which like he could have easily been. I mean, he used to bust everybody's ass in practice. When I tell you. Like, no doubt. But then once the game started, all he wanted to do was guard the other team's best player, try to get under people's skin and everything like that, and just showed a lot about his character.
Yeah, because y'all really ran through this like 32-4 that year. During that tournament, y'all played against, and then in that tournament, y'all ran against some pretty good teams. Y'all beat Siena first, Wisconsin, Kentucky. That's Tayshaun Prince's senior year. Bogans.
Yep.
Kentucky, y'all knocked them off. Then y'all knocked off UConn.
Yep.
How was Karan Butler? Seeing Karan Butler out there, he was.
Yo, man, all I'm gonna say is, so I was like the sixth man on the crew, so I would always come in for Byron, and we would go to like 3 guard lineups. And so like when you think about the Sweet 16 matchup and then the Elite Eight matchup, me and my 6'3", 165-pound self is guarding A. Tayshaun Prince from Kentucky, and then Karan Butler 2 days later in the Elite Eight, and I'm probably a big reason why Karan had 34 that night. But yo, man, sometimes dudes is different, man. Like, he was all of 6'7", 225 pounds, and a dog. I mean, as
Yeah.
physical as a player as I remember playing against, man. Like, he was one of those dudes on offense, like, he wanted to hit you first. He wanted to get into your body and see how you would respond, see how you would take that. So, man, I just,
Tough, hard
oh,
nosed
man,
player.
like, so I just remember that being a long weekend for me, personally.
That's when Ben Gordon was a freshman, Emeka Okafor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that nice
Tyleek
little
Brown.
top
Yeah.
round out
Yeah.
there. All right. All right. I know the name's going to be bringing on bells if you bring them. Like, yeah, I remember these guys. And y'all beat Kansas. Kansas was loaded that year. They had Drew
Yep.
Gooden, Collison,
Kirk Heinrich.
I remember Langford, Kurt Heinrich. I was that playing against that
Man,
Kansas
like
team.
that was a great game, man, because like our styles were like basically identical. We both just wanted to get up and down the floor. We were both talented as all get out. I mean, Drew Gooden was the number 4 pick in the draft that year. Kirk Heinrich was like a first round pick. So it was a great game,
Yeah,
man.
that's
Like, we were able, I remember they started off, they were up like 15-2 at the start or something like that. And then after that, we came out and then we just blew the brakes off of them after that. And they just couldn't hang with us.
All right, so y'all knocked them off, and then y'all played against Indiana in the chip, and that's they had a nice little. I think they snuck up on people because they knocked off Duke in the tournament. I remember
Yep.
that Jared Jeffries. That was like his coming out party, and then who else they had? They had Dane Fife.
Yep, Dane Fife, Tom
Uh,
Coverdale. Yep.
covered it up. So that was that like a real physical game playing against Indiana in the chip?
So I'll give you a little story, man. So we played Kansas, and then on the other side is Indiana, Oklahoma. And we had played Oklahoma earlier in the season, like right before Christmas, and they beat the brakes off of us. They were one of the teams that gave us one of our 4 losses, beat us by like 20 at their place. They were strong, physical, like to slow the game down, and we were the complete opposite. We just wanted to get up and down and run. And so, like, as soon as we saw Indiana beat Oklahoma, we knew we had it, man. We knew we had it. Hey, so the day before, so like the semifinals on Saturday and then the finals on Monday night. I remember me and Blake, man, we went to the liquor store on Sunday, man. We put our whole hotel room on ice, man. We had the tub on ice just because we knew no matter what, man, we was celebrating because we knew
Y'all knew you could smell it. You could smell it.
yeah, man, like
There was no denying y'all that year. Y'all was killing that year.
yeah, and they gave us a fight, man. Like it was a close game up until probably like the 8 or 9 minute mark left in the game, and then we were finally able to separate it a little bit. But they did a good job. They kept it close, made it into an ugly game, but they didn't have enough for us.
All right. So talk about that feeling of being a champion, man, being the NCAA champion, that feeling, going back to campus. You guys, mission accomplished, man. So talk about that feeling, man.
Surreal, man. Like there's no better feeling like after you win that national championship and like everybody, you grow up watching one shining moment and then all of a sudden you're on that stage and it's y'all. Like it was surreal, man. Like sometimes I even right now I have hard times even talking about it just because special.
Right. So that year y'all winning. So obviously, the seniors, they leaving, they entering the draft. So you're coming back for your senior year, Juan Dixon's leaving. So now it's like the 2 spot kind of like really, really opens up. Talk about your mindset, senior year. I know you got goals and aspirations of, making it to the league. You see your friends going. So Talk about your mentality getting ready for that senior
It,
year.
it was a lot like my junior year in high school. Like we had a whole bunch of guys leaving. There was only like me and Steve coming back and a couple of other guys, and so like I knew it was my time. And you got to remember, man, this is back. This is back when like I could have easily transferred after my freshman, sophomore, or even
Like how these guys do
yeah, like
now.
yeah,
They be out. Yeah, they be out.
there's
Like you stuck with it.
there's nobody that's sticking around being a six man for 3 straight years and then only having one go at it. But I
Right.
just knew like at the end of the day, I knew I was going to get my chance eventually, and then it was going to be up to me whether how much I made with it. So, again, man, I just had that. I went back. I had that chip on my shoulder, man. Like I was like, yo, I get one chance at this. I'm about to make it happen.
Right. And how was your relationship with like Gary Williams? Was he kind of like grooming you and letting you know like, yo, stay with it, stick with it. Your time's gonna come. How was your
No, man,
relationship
he
with
wasn't
him?
that type of coach. He wasn't all that personable off the floor, which I respected. It was just, hey, man, you come in, you do your work at 3:30, and may the best person win. I remember we had a freshman coming in who was a highly touted recruit, Chris McCray, who was a local kid, like a top 30 kid, and I knew he was coming for my spot. But kind of just like going back to me and Juan, like there was no way he was taking my spot. Like there was no way. I let him know essentially as soon as he stepped on campus, like during those first runs, like, no, I'm be coming at you every single day, man. Like this
Yeah.
isn't even about to be a conversation because there's no way.
Right.
So that was that.
All right. So your senior year, you guys go 21-10. This is where you like you break out. You're leading the team in scoring. You're having a great year. In my opinion, you was definitely one of the better players in college at the time. And we're gonna go back to this legendary moment. Your senior year, you make it to the tournament. You see UNC Wilmington. These guys are giving you guys everything that you can handle. Talk about that game a little bit. What was going on and how things finished up. Please take us to that moment.
So it's funny, man. So it's funny, man. So the whole scouting report is they had a little point guard who didn't really shoot that many threes, or he shot like a bad percentage or something. So we decided to go under every ball screen with this kid. Of course, he decides to come out and go 8 for 8. His name's John Goldsberry. Has the game of his life on us. And so now all of a sudden we in a dogfight, man. And, games close, getting tied. I remember we were up 1, I think, and we ended up fouling one of their big guys who was like a 50% free throw shooter with like 5 seconds left. We like, all right, man, he gonna give us one of these. Worst thing is we'll go into overtime and see what happens from there. Sure enough, he knocks down both of them. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, I'm not
How we go, man?
about to go out like this. A year after winning a national championship, I'm not about to get knocked out in the first round. Not my senior year. Nah, they ain't going down like that. So we call it timeout. The original play was for Steve Blake. But I remember coming out of the huddle, I told the guy who was inbounding the ball, Taj Holden, I was like, look, if Steve isn't open, I'm coming back to get it. And sure enough, play ran out. They denied Steve. I came back and got it. Had 5 seconds to go the length of the floor. I had to make something happen, man. And, I never shot that shot before. Never a full court running, sprinting as hard as I can, jump off 1 foot and let it go. But basketball gods was with me, man. And, the rest is history. Then I was headed to the tunnel, bro. I wasn't about to.
So when it left your hand, did it feel good?
Thought it was an air ball.
Really?
So you got to understand, Dane, when you moving that fast, and I'm like going away from the basket, and I jump off 1 foot, it's like you got to aim a little bit to the left because the ball's going to like carry. You know what I'm saying? So like I
Right.
shot it a good ways left. Now and I was like, man, this shit's about to be an air ball. And then I saw that thing go straight through the bottom of the net, bro. And I just took off running, man. I just took off.
So I was in college at the time when that happened. I was in my dorm room. I remember it was a Friday night. My residential advisor, she let me rock after a while because that shot went in. I'm like, yo, that's my boy right there. He hit that shot. Like, she couldn't understand what was going on. But I made so much noise and went crazy because I was like, That's Long Island right there that just made that shot. Now, your senior year, do you feel like because you guys won the championship that everybody was kind of like gunning for y'all, giving you guys like your
No
best
doubt,
shot?
no doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
there's only one team from the year before that can say that they're the defending national champions. That was us. And everybody gave it
Right.
everything that they had, man. I mean, but I still had a good senior year. I averaged about 18 a game. Was the second leading scorer in the ACC. I remember I was tight because
Mm-hmm.
they didn't put me on first team All ACC. I made even though I was
Yeah,
second
I saw
leading
that.
scorer, they still put me on second team All ACC. I was a little tight about that one, but all in all, man, like it's that kind of stuff that kind of fuels you as a player. Going back to having that chip on your shoulder, and then makes you work a little bit
Mm-hmm.
harder.
Right. So then the next game y'all played against Xavier, which was a real solid team. That's David West. Is that Mr. Lionel
Yep,
Chalmers, upstate? Upstate. Okay. Who else was on that
Romaine
team? Do you know
Sato,
who played up?
who
Romain
yep,
Sato. Oh my
yep,
God.
he had a quick glance in the league, and then he was actually a teammate of mine when I played overseas.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that was a good team that y'all beat, and then y'all lost to Michigan State. They didn't have like a lot of name guys, but you could tell like they was just like bunch of big, just like
Yeah,
grinders,
man.
bro. Like just
Typical Coach Izzo team, man. They was gonna throw the ball up on the glass, and everybody was gonna go try to get it. And it was one of those
right.
football type games. And I remember we lost by 2 that year. Steve had a great look at the end. It just hit off the back of the rim, and but at the end of the day, man, like going from that, like looking back in my college career to say I played in 2 Final Fours, a national championship, hit a legendary shot, in the tournament, like I don't necessarily know how
Right.
much more.
Great college career, man. You went to March Madness every single year. You did not miss a tournament. Your senior year, you kind of showcased that you could lead a
Yep.
team. So I felt like your chances for that 2000. I forgot to get timelines and stuff for the years, but people can go back and what I'm saying. Look, you got to do your history. Uh, you entered the 2003 NBA
Yep.
draft. 2003 NBA draft. What's your mindset after your senior year? School go. I forgot to ask you. What did you major in while you was in
Government and
college?
politics. It's funny, man. It was just one of those classes I took as like a freshman, and I had a cool teacher, and I thought it was all good, and so like I just decided that was my major. Sure enough, that was like the one major where I had to write nothing but essays, bro, and it was awful. It was awful, man. Like a lot of times, teachers wouldn't give me any slack. Like they didn't care that I played at Cameron Indoor the night before. Like, nah, you better be at class and you better be handling your schoolwork and stuff like that.
They tough on athletes. People be thinking athletes get away with stuff, but they be on your neck about getting it done, man. Like,
Yeah, for sure. So,
they,
yeah, it was a tough one. It was a
they
tough one.
will. Yeah. All right. So your senior year, you finish up. You get ready for the NBA draft. What's that experience like? Getting ready in the process of trying to get an agent. Where did you feel that you would possibly like what round you would go? Like, take us back to that time? What you was
Yeah,
dealing
man,
with?
I was realistic about my approach. Like, back at the time, like there weren't a whole lot of shooting guards that were 6'3", 6'4", 175 pounds in the league, and I knew like if I was going to get drafted, it was going to be somewhere in the second round. But I just told myself I was going to put my best foot forward. I remember I worked out probably as harder than I ever did in my whole life. Just getting ready for the draft. I remember having a couple of workouts with different NBA teams, one of which, man, like going back to like when we were getting started, when we were talking offline before. So, quick story, it's probably like a week, 10 days before the draft, and I got to work out with the Miami Heat, right? And I remember it's the night before, and I'm, somebody from the Heat had taken us out to eat, and we were, we weren't drinking or anything like that, but we were, just hanging out on South Beach, on Ocean Ave, whatnot. And then finally, I get a call from from my agent. He's like, you know who you're working out with tomorrow, right? And I was like, nah, I don't have any idea. I was like, I know like Keith Bogans because Keith Bogans was with me. He's like, yo, you might want to go back to the hotel and get some rest because you're working out with Mr. Dwayne Wade tomorrow. I was like, oh man. I was like, oh man. Um,
He had in his senior year, he kind of like had a coming out party in the tournament, finished off strong. He
yeah.
was
Everybody knew. I mean, everybody knew he was going to be a lottery pick, and so I think one of my claims to fame was, like I think, during that workout, I might have been one of the main reasons why Miami decided to take Dwayne Wade. He was a monster, bro. He was a
oh
monster.
man,
He was
yeah.
different. He was one of those guys. I had never played against somebody that could change directions as fluidly and as fast as he could. Like his first step,
Mhm.
you felt like you were with him, and then he'd cross over and he'd just be by you, or he'd spin off you, and it would just be. It was crazy, man. I mean, obviously
Athleticism.
people know because he became who he became. But man, being able to be there, be with him for an hour and a half workout up close and personal, you versus him, man. It was something.
Right. So, did you got invited to the Chicago camp?
No, didn't get an invite to Chicago. Um, and so
Do you think that hurt
huh?
your chances a little bit? Do you think that kind of hurts your draft stock a
Yeah,
little
I
bit?
think
Not get
so.
like how you think? How don't you get
Well,
invited
one
to
of the
that?
things that my agent was telling me was that scouts had seen me so many times because I played in Maryland. And it's like, yeah, man, we've
Mm-hmm.
seen this kid play, 60, 75 times, however many times. And plus, I think they just wanted to get a different look at other people considering they knew I was going to, at best, be a second round pick. So that's how that goes sometimes, which I understood. So, that was
Okay.
that.
Okay. So, talk about like the mindset, like you finish your college, like having to like start all over again. Like you get to the NBA draft, everybody's it's only like what 29 teams, and everybody is so many spots available. Talk about like having to like reprove yourself from like you got to go right back to start.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just that next chapter. Just like when you go from high school to college, like people don't necessarily care what you did in high school when you get to college. Like, yeah, that's cool. You want a state championship, but what you doing now? Same thing when you trying to make the league coming from college. Like, there's numerous guys that can sit there and say, "Yeah, I won a championship. I played in Final Fours." Like, that don't hold no weight here.
Right.
Like, it's the creme de la creme, man. It's the top 400 guys in the world. So, that
Mm-hmm.
just is what it is, man. And again, I was realistic about it. Like I knew that there was probably a slim chance of me getting drafted, and as much as I would have loved to hear my name get called on draft night, like it didn't happen. But right after
Mm-hmm.
that, I was able to play summer league, and then and I knew like if I didn't have a real legit chance of going to camp with a team and making it, like I knew I was going to go overseas because at that point, man, this is a business, and I got to get that bread, man.
Right, absolutely. So talk about the summer league experience. You go through the draft day, you don't get your name called. Uh, I was looking at the list. In hindsight, looking now, like looking at some of the guys that got called, it's I was kind of getting worked up a little bit. Like, yo, how in the world does this man not get drafted? So I'm just like, I was gonna share the screen and put it up and show, but I'm not even. It's going to rev me. I'm not even going to rev myself up like that. I'm not even going to do it. So talk about the summer league experience, playing in the NBA summer league and all that. How was that
Yo,
experience
so
for
it
you?
was crazy. So, and here again, man, getting a chance to go against one of the all-time greats. If not, some people may regard him as the goat. Um, my first,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm in the 2003 draft. So that's the LeBron, Melo, Wade draft, Chris Bosh draft. And sure enough, I'm playing summer league with the Orlando Magic, and our first game is against the Cleveland Cavaliers, up
Oh
close and
wow.
personal. And and Braun is so big at the time, even as a 18-year-old kid. The summer league was supposed to be played in the Magic's their practice gym, which is like a small, just one court gym, all in their arena, but like someplace else. But considering it was Braun, they
Mm-hmm.
decided to move the game onto the main floor and let regular fans in the building. and the game was sold out.
Oh
The game
wow.
was sold out. Puffy was sitting courtside. All these celebrities were sitting courtside just to watch this 18-year-old kid play a summer league game. So that was my first summer league, bro. It was crazy. Being able to do that against Braun, man. It's actually funny. Like, I didn't know he even knew me at the time, but like I remember, like before the game, like I was running out. I had to go use the bathroom or something. And he was coming in and he hit me. He was like, "Yo, what's up, Drew?" And I was like, "Oh, damn, Braun." I was like, "This." I mean, it's crazy because I'm a 22-year-old kid and he's 18, and I'm still like, "Damn, he knows who I am." You know what I'm saying? Like that's how big that dude
Right.
was, man.
Student
Yeah.
of the game, man. You watch basketball all day, man. So you had a I remember you playing the summer league. You had a good solid summer league. So you decided to take your talents overseas. Did you take that chip on your shoulder going overseas? Like, yo, I'm gonna show these NBA cats what they're missing out on. I'm just gonna just
Even
torch
more so,
everybody.
man. Like I went over there with the sole purpose of like, all right, man, like y'all don't think I'm good enough for the league. Y'all think I should be over here doing this? Watch this. And man, like I remember, the first 4 or 5 games until I hurt my ankle real bad, and I probably had to miss like a month or two. But the 5 games leading up to that, no lie, Dana, I was averaging 36. I mean, I was straight going at everybody. I mean, I was that whole year. It was probably the first couple years, to be honest, in my career. Like, anytime I heard that somebody was making more than me, I was like, oh, and playing my position, and I got to see him. Oh, it was
Yeah.
straight at him. It was like,
Yeah, because as I'm looking here on my list, I see top scorer, top scorer, top scorer, like year after year. It was like top scorer, top scorer, top scorer. It's
yeah,
like, God damn, Drew not playing. He not playing no games out here.
yeah,
Like,
man. So I think
he's
I think
going.
I'm the only I think I'm the only person in history to go from. I played in my first year was in the second division in Italy. I was the top scorer there. I averaged like ended up averaging. I cooled off after because my ankle wasn't right the whole year, Dane. Like even after I came back, I couldn't dunk the ball the whole year. Like my ankle was that bad. Um, but I ended up averaging like 27. And then my second year, I went to the first division in Italy on a smaller team. I averaged like 22 a night. And then my third year, I was on like the best team in Italy, and we were also playing in the Euroleague. And the Euroleague's the best of the best in Europe. You know, you're playing against the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, all those type teams. And I led the Euroleague in scoring. So first 3 years, right out the gate, I led
Yeah.
each league I was playing in scoring. And then after that, then my career just took off. In terms of playing on the teams I was playing on, as well as the bread that I was able to make.
Yeah, no, you straight scorching cats. So what was the was it a big adjustment? You be in a whole other country, different language, whole different culture shock, being away from your family. How was that like your first couple of years? How'd you
Yo,
deal
it's
with
tough my
that?
first year, man, because I'm coming from Maryland, where I was playing in front of 20,000 people every night. Now all of a sudden I get dropped off in the middle of Italy, in between two mountains, where the town size is less than 20,000. Nobody knows how to speak English. But the one thing I did have, man, I lived like 3, 4 minutes away from that gym. And I was in the gym constantly. That was the one place I knew I could always go, and everybody speaking the same language in there, some form or fashion. And
Right, right,
so,
right, right.
but yeah, man, it was tough, especially at the start. But took a little bit of time. I was able to learn Italian. So my first 3 years I was in Italy. By the end of my second year, I was fluent in Italian, so I can speak and get around and whatnot. And overall, man, it was a great experience, man. Like any far greater than any experience I probably could have gotten being at home and playing in the league, just from a personal like growth standpoint.
Right. Learn a lot about yourself because you're out on your own, you know what I'm saying? Meeting a whole new people and stuff like that, learning a new language. So I'm pretty sure that experience definitely helped you mature and grow. As your success, right? You start winning some championships. Things start going well for you overseas. You're doing very well for yourself. Did you have any goals? Possibly like, yo, like when they gonna give me a call
It's
back to the league? Like, yo,
it's
what's
funny,
up,
man.
man? Like, what's going
It's
on?
funny. So after that third year, when I led the EuroLeague in scoring, that year I actually played. I played with Andrea Bargnani, who that year was the number 1 pick of the 2006 NBA draft. And so, like, there was nothing but NBA GMs and scouts coming over there to watch him. And so it's funny, man, after that year, I had a chance to go back and play on a 1-year minimum contract in the league, with Detroit. And I turned it down, man, just because, I was at that point I was liking it. I was liking it so much over there. I was playing 35 minutes a game, and the bread that I was going to be making, as opposed to a minimum contract in the league, I was making like double that. So I was like, "Yo, I've already got the validation,
And you're getting minutes,
and I'm
and you're
exactly."
playing.
And again, like, I knew in my heart of hearts, like, because we would then play, a couple years after that, we played a couple of preseason games against NBA teams. Like, we came over to Dallas and Golden State, and Minnesota actually came over and played a team when I was in Turkey. Like, I was on the floor with those guys, and I knew, like I put up numbers every one of those games, so I knew I could play. Like, I didn't have that itch of feeling like, am I good enough? Can I belong? Like, I knew I was, and my situation was just better, and I was making more money, so I was staying put.
Right. Now, 'cause a lot of guys would, that's the best thing you could do. Because a lot of guys, when you shining and you're getting, like, the people they were showing you love there too, right? You started becoming like known over there. They show you love. So to go from that to maybe possibly going to an NBA team to just sit there and worry about minutes and
For what? For what?
like,
Just to say I'm an NBA player? Like,
right.
that's
You already
right.
a pro.
I'm a pro. Right?
You're a
I'm
pro
already a
already.
pro. Like, you can put me on any court with any 9 other pros, and I can handle myself. So that part, to me, it didn't mean anything really to me. Like, I knew I was one of the top 400 players in the world. Like, you couldn't tell me anything less. So
Right. So as you're winning championships, right, you're playing in these different leagues, right? You got a 9-year overseas career. Was the game, because I be telling people all the time, 'cause I live overseas now, the FIBA rules and everything. Talk about the physicality of the game, and the difference between playing overseas versus. Talk about that a little
it's
bit.
not even close, bro. Like, it's funny. So, like, when we would always go back and we would play against NBA teams in the exhibition, man, we put our hands on guys, and refs would be blowing the whistle, like, immediately. Be like, yo, man, I barely touched him. But people got to understand, man, a game overseas is so physical. It's so different and physical. Like, and plus some of the arenas and some of the environments you're playing in. Like, you asked me about college playing in Cameron Indoor. Man, when I was in Greece and I was playing for Panathinaikos and we would play our rival Olympiacos, bro, Dana, I can show you clips. I can show you film of what the stands look like. Like, it doesn't.
Hostile
It makes
environments.
it makes
Like they give it up something
it
different
makes
over there.
Cameron Indoor look like a 5th grade CYO gym, bro. Like, there's nothing even close to it. Man, there was sometimes you go in gyms, man, you just had to make sure that you got out in time, because if you didn't, man, you might not make it out. You
Yeah.
feel me? So I'm telling you, all right, I'm telling you, man, I've had all types of crazy stories playing in those arenas, man. There'd be some games, some gyms where you play in Greece, man, fans are spitting on you, man, spitting on you. And, as a person, as a
I've
man, you
heard
like,
stories like that.
yeah, as a person, you like, yo, I ain't about to have nobody spit on you. And then you turn around and you look and you want to think about going up there. There's about 500 of them versus one of you. So you might want to choose your battles correctly. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
man.
crazy.
That is wild, man. So, yo, you played 9 years overseas. You won championships. Talk about a little bit when you made the All Star team, right?
Yeah,
Was in
yeah, yeah. I
Greece.
mean, I made the All Star team through all 3 years in Greece. Great experience. You know, just doing what I did, trying to perfect my craft. At that point, just trying to be as good of a shooter as can be, because that was kind of my calling card. The other couple of highlights, man, winning 2 EuroLeague championships over there, which is basically like winning an NBA championship or an NCAA championship over here. At that point, man, that's when I knew, like, and I think that's when my career started to take a downturn was because at that point, I finally felt like in my career, I proved everything that I could prove. And there was nothing else that I felt like I had to prove. And then once that chip was off my shoulder, I wasn't the same. Like that drive wasn't there quite as much. And, after 9 years of being away from your family, 10 months out of the year, that starts to take a little bit of a toll on you mentally. So as soon as like that little chip, that little fuel to my fire started to go, that's when I knew I had to walk away, man. And I was still healthy, but I knew I had accomplished everything that I wanted to and then some. So, for me to be able to get in and get out and do what I did, I just considered it a blessing.
Right. That's why I think your story is so dope, because a lot of people, they, leave when their body's all broken up and, they kind of wear out their welcome a little bit, but you left like on top of your game, no regrets, you did it up, traveled the world, supported yourself, got your family now. So update the people what you're doing now. I know I turned on the TV to my surprise like maybe a year, 2 years ago, and I'm just, surfing through the channel, Big Ten Network. I'm like, hold up. Know that guy.
Yeah.
Tell people what you up to now, man.
Yeah, man. So actually now, the first couple of years after I retired, I was doing that. I was commentating. I was being a broadcaster, doing stuff with ESPN and the Big Ten Network. And then, a year into it, a guy from the NBA reached out and asked if I ever considered doing stuff, being in the front office of an NBA team. And so, the last 7 years I've been doing that, man. First 3 years I was with the Minnesota Timberwolves as a scout. Then I went to Philly for 2. Then I was in Boston last year. Now this year I actually just took a new gig, man. I'm the director of scouting for the Denver Nuggets. So, yeah,
That's
man.
awesome, man. Hold up, man. Hold up, man. Gotta give you the clap for that, man. We got a round of applause for that, man. Long Island legend, man. Drew Nicholas, man. I really appreciate it. I know you don't do this often right here, and speak and cover this. So I just really appreciate you for taking out the time, man, and just want to just wish you nothing but the best, man, going forward, man, and everything that you're doing, man, and definitely inspiration to these young kids out here in Long Island. Definitely need to know that you definitely paved the way out here, man.
I appreciate it, man. Just yeah, man, it's surreal, just a little skinny, scrawny kid from Hempstead, man, just continuing every day, try to put one foot in front of the other and see how it all shakes out.
Something in that Hempstead water, man. There's been a lot of ball players, man. I don't know what's in that water in Hempstead, but man, y'all have birthed a lot of great ball players out there.
Dane, and here's the unfortunate thing, man. And you know it probably better than me, man. When I think back when I was probably 12, 13, 14 years old, I probably wasn't even one of the top 5 or 10 best kids coming up out of Hempstead. But some certain guys start to take different paths and start to make different decisions with their life. And that's why every time when I come back, man, I try to make it an emphasis on speaking, just because even though I didn't go to Hempstead High School, I grew up in Hempstead. So, I have an understanding of what's going on. And, it's just a shame, man, because there was a whole bunch of dudes more talented than me, man. More talented than me.
I see